In its day, this chassis was pretty cutting edge stuff. Just went ahead and rebuilt this here, but it's not as cutting edge as what happened in the 1920s and the 1930s. Mr. Tokarev, Mr. Garand, both came at the problem of putting a major caliber gas-operated semi-automatic rifle on the field of combat. They came at it from two different directions and achieved two completely different sets of results that all meant the same thing when it was all done. Today, this SVT-40, we're going to go take a look down inside of this and discuss the difference between refurbishment, conservation, and a reset. Let's go. Well, every one of these rifles come to me with a story. This particular weapon has been run hard. The owner said he ran it hard when he was a lot younger and he finally hung it up. So we're going to discuss the difference between refurbishment and conservation. In a conservation, we're stopping active decay. There's some rust on this rear shield here. This rear sight is loose, and that's without me squeezing it. Lots of damage up here on this fore end. It's been split, it's been cracked, it's been whatever. This gun is actually in remarkably good shape. It's got a little bit of rust, say, out on the metal up in the front end of it, but it's in remarkably good shape for a weapon that was built in 1941. These SVTs are famous for not sitting in their bedding very well. We'll show later on that there's some cracks down around the back end, but the big one is this. You take a look up inside that chamber, you are definitely looking at the back end of a shell that has had its head torn off of it. So there is an entire 7.62 by 54 body up inside this chamber with the head ripped off of it. So, you know, what causes that? Well, typically it's either dirt inside a chamber, you know, rust, or somebody had tried to dig another one of these out with a sharp tool and then put a nick up inside of it that traps this thing. It's almost like a weld. It'd be like if this pencil was sticking into the chamber and we obturated the cartridge up against it, it would just stick there. It wouldn't come back off. This particular owner of this gun said he ran it hard. So if we're going to conserve this gun, we would boil it all out, stop all the rust. But in this particular case, it's clean enough to work on, and we're looking at the showstopper. Cartridge case ripped off. So we're going to start at refurbishment. I've been told that this gun had a new gas block put on it because that had been cracked. We'll look up there. We'll take a look in the gas system. Here's the 800-pound gorilla. So I guess we could say weapon is not fine. Yet. We work on chamber area first. As with most things Russian, this is simple, and yet it's not. And I have not completely mastered the technique of taking this thing apart yet, because man, there are a lot of springs that are just waiting to bite your ass in here. And I'm sure I'm doing this wrong. And I'm sure somebody's gonna come tell me why I'm not doing it right. But in terms of trapping the energy of this spring, I've never really found a good way to do it. The bolt carrier has to be brought back until a couple of notches line up, and then the whole thing just kind of comes apart. It just does. You're looking through my hands. This is, we did a Walter K43 in here that looked a lot like this. And yeah, it's scroty. It's got a lot of mung on it, but it's not that bad. This particular device pops open, unlocks that, brings the fire control mechanism down. This is so simple, it hurts. We'll tear it down in the conservation phase, but right now we're concerned about refurb. And in this particular case, this little portal, when it's open, let me see if my pencil will actually fit through there. That lets you stuff a cleaning rod down this thing and clean it out in the field without having to come in from the muzzle. Interesting arrangement there. And then when this pops back down, it's a lock, which holds the trigger guard in. Not much to this. It's field stripped. You push up, there's a bullet point activated lock down there, And that allows you to slide this band over. And we take off this top part. Now, this is rust impacted. It's got sugar rust on it. This will clean up nice. I'm not worried about it. It's not why the gun's down. We take the forend off, and we can see this forend's hurting. I mean, let me see if I can get the camera to really pick this up here for you. That's a split that comes all the way up here. There's a split right there. All these dark spots here are oil impregnated splits. Nail. This forend's hurting. We'll deal with this. The beauty of it is, though, is we can run the gun without this forend on it. Now, this brings us to the gas piston, and this is an actual, the cylinder's on the outside, and the part that moves the pistons on the inside is the part that isn't. And then it has a tappet rod here, and it's supposed to come to the rear end. Hang on a minute. Oh, okay, there we go. There it is. Okay, a little bit of rust here. Yeah, a little bit of dirt impact. So we're going to have to remove the tappet. This is the part that actually hits the bolt to the rear. So that came out and didn't fight us too bad. That's a good thing. We'll talk about all that in a little bit. And then the gas piston comes off and reveals high levels of scrode. Holy cow. So this is probably one of the things we're going to have to deal with right off the bat. Bruno, push in on that for me. Come in as tight as you can come in on that. Okay. And as you can see there, yeah, that's... We'll show you guys a still of that. But it is what it is, because when the gun went down, it wasn't taken care of. Well, can you imagine if this gun went down in the 1940s instead of the 1990s, where we would have been? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take the main, just drop the stock off of, because it'll fall out right now. The whole thing will drop off, and it'll leave us with just the action. Back at another angle in a moment. So there's a key that goes through this oval slot. We drive this key out. That key's got a hole in it to allow the gas to come up out of the hole here, and then through this variable orifice, and we'll take that variable orifice out. It's threaded down in there, and there's a 5-sided tool that I'm going to have to make in order to be able to get, see, there's a 5-sided tool that I've never actually seen in the wild that goes on that. But as you rotate this, it varies the amount of gas that's allowed to dump out this hole in the top, and that's how you vary the stroke on this thing. And then once that key is removed, this entire block then rotates, turns down this set of threads right here. There it is. Turns down this set of rust-coated threads right here and out the end. Now, while there is a lot of rust on this gun, it's all been slathered in oil, so there's no pits. We can work with this. There's a little bit of sugar rust up here, but we can work with this. This is not that bad. I have seen guns far, far worse than this, and this owner is getting the maintenance done, so we're not saying anything about this man. When we get all this done, there's just some things I'm looking at that have to be done before we can get in. And once again, we're bouncing in and out of conservation versus refurbishment. There are some things that have to be done to this, but we don't want to sink an entire amount of effort into the gun until we know we can get the 800-pound gorilla dealt with, which is that stuck cartridge in the chamber. If that cartridge is stuck and the chamber's ruined, doing everything else doesn't make any sense. In this particular case, this shroud fits over the end of the barrel. There's a gas port in it right here. This cross key right here that has that hole drilled in it. That particular cross key to gas comes through that, and then it comes into this gas nut. And we'll dive into this a little bit later if this gun isn't completely ruined. There's 5 different size holes in this thing, and the size of the flat out on the end. It's got a big flat, a smaller flat, a littler flat, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. And then the size of the flat that's showing is how much gas you get, so it's very tactile. There's numbers on it too, but who the hell's reading at that time of the morning? When we get to the rear here, we notice a couple of things. The stock bolt, in the way you think about the stock bolt, fits through, just sits in here and holds the gun together. It doesn't do anything. Unlike a lot of military rifles, the recoil surface in this gun is back here. And what's happened is that because of all of the oil soaking, and we'll get a better shot on this later if we get at it, this recoil surface right here is oil soaked. And hang on a minute, playing with the lights, there it is right there. There's a lot of oil in here, and this whole stock is starting to just disintegrate, and there's cracks radiating out. This can be fixed. I think the Russians fixed it. They drilled 2 holes through the stock going this way. They put 2 bolts through it, and they were done with it. I don't see us being that. We're not going to be that out in the open about it. We'll probably drill a hole right in here and bury a 3 or 4 inch long screw up in here. Cover all this with Acraglass, sit in and bed the gun. You won't see it from the outside, and it'll keep the bedding from filling to the rear. But let's get on about what the hell we're going to do with that little problem right there. There's a couple of different ways to deal with this stuck cartridge. There are stuck cartridge pullers that go in the inside and open up like that and try to give you a purchase on it. I've actually seen guys do it with what amounts to an edged easy out, where they go in here and do this. That scares me because it runs the potential risk of gouging the walls of the chamber. There are other options that involve chamber reamers, where we could actually drop down in here. We could actually go in here and we could ream this out. We could actually cut away. But I'm worried about concentricity issues. I wouldn't do this with a reamer until I took the barrel off of the action. But the way I'm going to choose to go about it is we're going to make a chamber casting. My good old little pot of Cerosafe here. We're going to heat this pot of Cerosafe up and do a chamber casting where we're going to just pour down in here, cast a slug in this, and see if we can't knock this whole thing out in one piece without going in there with any edged tools. And then we will evaluate from there. I'll be back here in a couple with all I'm going to do is go warm this stuff up in a double boiler, and I'll be right back. Warm this up just a little bit, and we'll see where we are here. I don't have to get it really, really hot. I'm just going to warm it up a little bit. Now you might be able to see some water vapor forming here, and half of what's coming out the front end of this torch is water vapor and a lot of heat and a lot of carbon dioxide. So you got to remember, if you're doing anything with a torch, you're getting water all over stuff too. It's customary on the founding floor to yell hot metal. So hot metal. We didn't have to worry about getting any of that on, say, the action or whatever, because it doesn't stick to anything. It doesn't wet anything. You just fill it up, and I have to tell you, it was starting to get my hands a little bit warm. So I had to getting on about it. We're not worried about a little bit of oversplash here. We haven't locked ourselves in. And when this sets up, I want this to start shrinking a little bit. It'll shrink just a little bit. We'll come up inside with like a 1/4 inch rod, and we'll just knock this loose and see what this looks like. There we go. Put some ass in it, boy. We know you got some. So what we have here is a 7.62 by 54R case. And you can see, boy, it got in there pretty good. Well, I had filled it up full of Cerosafe. You can see this dirt here. The nick we shouldn't be concerned about. I went in and put that little nick in it to give this casting something to haul on. And then we let it cool off and whack the piss out of it. And I'm going to tell you honestly, we didn't show you guys what it took to really get this apart. Oh my God, he's messing with this classic weapon. Yeah, I'm going to tell you, the inside of this barrel looks like a piece of leather. I'm going to recrown the muzzle no matter what. But getting this out was the 800-pound gorilla. While we were doing this and it looked like I was going to score, I started boiling all the other stuff. So we'll pull all that out of the pot, lay this thing out on the bench, take a look at it after it's been cleaned. All right, Bruno's running the camera right now, and we're going to try, there it is, to get you a picture of the inside of this bore. There's the rifling. That is a very small fishing lure light that I'm backing up the bore backing it up, and we're going to get right there. That's the focus point right there. And you can actually see where the rifling begins right there. You can see the flutes in the neck. And this chamber is hosed right there. Okay, so that's where the rifling begins. Optically, we're trying to show you something that we can see with our eyes, but doesn't translate to camera very well. So here's how to describe it. You have that light. There's an inner orange ring. There's a black shadow, almost like an umbra, and then you can see right where the rifling is. Bang, 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 and then you can see all that smut. And that smut on the inside of the chamber is actually rust, and that's what grabbed onto the round. So what I'm going to do is get up in here with a bore brush, and we're going to scrubby-dubby the living piss out of this thing and see what we got. And we are going to try to avoid having to take this barrel off and stick a chamber reamer up inside of it. What would happen is that we would come back around one full turn and then ream in and kiss all this stuff away. We're going to see if we can avoid that. And we'll be back, but this is about as good a view of it as I can give you. So we're in the middle of an episode on an SVT 40, and I'm standing here with an 1895 Winchester lever gun. What do those two weapons have in common? Here, there's two things they have in common. They both shoot the 7.62x54R cartridge in this particular case, and they're both tiptoeing across that line where they're turning from relatively simple jobs into flipping projects. This thing has been kicking my butt because half of this gun is Japanese. Half of this gun is Winchester, and this Japchester has been kicking my rear end because the entire feed system on it, I'm trying to make metric stuff, play with English stuff. But the real reason why I got it out is because I needed a cartridge. I needed a 7.62x54R expended round in a clean chamber, and I know that this gun has a clean chamber. So let's get a look at why I needed this, and this has everything to do with our little almost project. Okay, I got a finger full of Wheeler 220 grit on here. It's very, very important that you don't get any finger oils on this or anything. And then I've got this lap, and the way I made this lap is I just bored out knocked the primer out. It's a Birdian primer. Turned a 201 hole in the back end of it, threaded it 1/4-20, run a jam nut down on top of it. Now I've got a lap. I don't want this lap to be harder than the inside of the chamber because I don't want to score the chamber. But what I do want to do is knock all of this rust and everything off of it. So we'll go ahead here and smear this down. Okay. With that lapping compound, we're going to stick it up inside the chamber here. Now, I'm going to grab a drill motor, and you're just going to have to trust me. Hit your I believe button, you nukes out there, you know what I mean. And I'm going to pick this up with a drill. And I'm not pushing real hard. I'm not trying to move anything. I am just slowly lapping this until it touches the rear end. Now I'm touching off on the back end of the chamber. I don't want to cut anything. But what I'm doing here is just cutting all of that mung loose. We're not trying to make the chamber any bigger. We're just lapping it. And when we pull it out, let me cut this thing loose here. We pull it out, and we can take a look at the fact that we're cutting in a couple of places. We're cutting, hang on a minute, let me move the light here and see if I can't get this a little bit. There it is. We're cutting in a couple of places. We're cutting back here in the rear, and that's right where it parted. And we're cutting right up there. You see that silver mark? And that's all been cleaned out now. That's actually quite smooth and easy to rotate. And of course, now this whole thing's going to get dunked in a bucket full of kerosene in order to get all of this abrasive out, because if you think that dirt will hang a cartridge in this thing, you ought to blow one of these things up like a balloon in here, have it obtruate, and just completely screw it up. Okay, so we're going to clean all of this, and believe it or not, we'll go in there and optically take a look, see if it's a little bit better, and throw this thing together and see if we can't get it to go bang, and see if the refurb's right. If the chamber still holds on to a round after this, or something gets stuck, or it looks like it's going to grab it, we're not going to have any choice but to pop the receiver off. We're trying to avoid that. We're trying to avoid it. But if we did, we would come right up to here. We would actually face this forward, one turn, bring the barrel up, bring the receiver around this way or the barrel around that way. And then move all of these cuts up in and cut up into clean metal. But I'm thinking we're going to get away with not having to do that. Try to be judicious in how you do it. You don't want a whole lot of pressure. Just go up in there, do what you got to do, and come back out. You're not jamming this thing up in there. You're just getting it until it's free to rotate. On a rimmed round, it's touching off right here, and on a rimless round, it's touching off up here. I don't expect to see it doing this much work up here, but now it's free and smooth to rotate. So now I'm going to wrap out. All right, so we got the chamber cleaned out. We went outside and just bare minimum. We don't have the hand guards on this thing. We don't have anything on it. We just want to see if the cases are going to stick in the chamber. I have the gas turned down all the way. We've got a relatively scroty gas system that's been corroded, so the thing leaks like a sieve. But as you can see here, on discharge, it did pull the bolt about a third of the way open. So the cartridge isn't sticking. There are no issues there. I'm now going to depart the chamber, tear this thing all the way back apart again, and go after the wood bits, because now all the other things I got to get done to this gun start making sense. So let's take one more look at this gas system before I tear it down, shall we? So when I said we ran this thing naked, I mean we ran it naked. The only thing that was actually holding the action in the stock is this action screw back here, and the fact that the trigger guard is sucking down on the rear end back there. So the basics of this, from what we just saw in slow motion, were the gas, as the projectile is passing through, it passes through the gas key, which holds this on, through this particular, through the regulator, which we're going to show you up close. I'm going to make a drawing, tell you how this works, because you'll never see it. The gas blows through this variable port. What it doesn't need blows out this hole in the top, and then this piston comes to the rear. So as this piston comes to the rear, the force is transmitted down this rod, and it gives the bolt a good little boot, and it travels to the rear, picks up a cartridge, and goes back in again. So what we saw on the slow-mo was the fact that this system is running. It's not running optimally. I don't have it, but the cartridges are not sticking in the chamber. So we're at a stopping point. We're at the end of the refurbishment, and now we're going to get into the conservation. The next time you see this rifle, we'll be full into fixing wood and handling cosmetic issues, but we got the important stuff done. Fire control group works, cartridges extract, gas system works even though it leaks like a sieve. In the interim, when we were gone, a significant amount of effort has been expended on this, but as promised, I've got it, I would say 95% of the way apart. I didn't tear it all the way down because there's really no reason to take the fire control group apart, and I didn't need to take the rear sight apart. So here we go. Stock, unit of issue, 1 each. I might go ahead and drill this and put this screw in here, but I haven't done it yet, and it's outside of the scope of this video. It's not what I wanted to get done on this video. We'll probably do it eventually just because it has to be done, but it's not as bad as the owner portrayed it. Anyway, I got that there. This fore end was just totaled. It was totaled. So I had to come up with a way to reinforce it. These pins were a great idea, but they don't add any longitudinal reinforcement in here. So I did glue it together. Now, if you glue this crack, it will just move over one crack and split again. So the furniture guys that are going to get on me with all of the wonder glues and everything, yeah, you're right. However, not in a firearms application. So what I did is I put some reinforcement up inside here. Impregnation of the crocus cloth with the acryglass forms a very nice pseudo fiberglass type deal. This particular treatment, you butter the inside of the channel, lay this crocus cloth down on it, and then run a glass over the outside of it and smooth it all out with a rod. Also works really well on 8.5 fore ends. And that's pretty much how you go about doing that. And then the rest of it was some stain and a little bit of dark Danish oil. And this thing is, I mean, it actually sounds like a musical instrument now. It's in one piece. So that got fixed, and I left it a little bit proud at the front and the back to try to trap it on in. The other thing that was horked up was this gas piston, and you can actually probably see some shine on it right now. I came in and very, very lightly polished it, and then took a polished hammer and popped it this way, and I just hit it this way. I tapped on it, not on the edge, but on the end, and I made this entire piston kind of bulge out a little bit and got this fit now honed down to where it's pretty. Here, wait a minute. You can almost hear it. It's popping a little bit. It's holding pressure. This should work. I think we're going to be able to get away with not having to remake that piece. Well, just take a piece of metal and throw it in the lathe. No, it's not going to go like that. We're not going to do that. Anyway, I think I got that sorted out, and that's pretty much it. The rest of the gun was here. There's a screw missing out of the butt plate. This is a hardware store screw that I'll replace that held in the forward barrel band retention unit. But basically, this entire whippersnapper is here, and it's impressive. So there's one other thing I want to talk about, and we're going to go over to the towel and take a look at it, and that's how this little gas gizmo works. This little itty-bitty nut here, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call this a gas key. Very hard to see it on video and keep it in focus, so let me draw something for you. On one end of this thing, there's a long flat, a shorter flat, a slightly shorter flat. Let's see here. And then we have this, and then we have this. All right? And written on this, there is a 2 written there, a 1.7 written there. Let me get that all the way down. 1.5 here, 1.3 here, and a 1.2 written there. So that's what's written on this flat spot. And you can see here I took a couple of photographs of it to try to give you a little better look at what they're written and how they're done. And I think they were trying to give you kind of a visual as well as numbers. Well, what you've got on this, and I'm gonna just make this a little bit bigger. There's a round part to this, and you can see all the holes that are drilled in it. Let me tug this up here a little bit. So the 2mm gas hole is down here. The 1.7mm gas hole is over here. The 1.5 is over here, 1.3, and the 1.2. So we're basically 180 degrees out. So this would be the 2mm hole. You follow what I'm saying? So that's 180 degrees out. Your eyeball, you're looking at it from up above, up here. And the gas is coming in the center of this, flowing through, up through the barrel into the center of this and back into the gas piston. The gas piston, that's a little bit dirty, but we're going to try this. So you have the hole coming up out of the barrel. It's coming through that key that holds everything together. It's flowing up through the orifice in this bad boy right here. Here we go. And then back down into the threaded portion and out into that piston looking gizmo right out here. And then this has got a hollow on the inside. And then the piston rides over the outside of this and pushes to the aft on that, on the gas tube. So the cylinder is driven off of the piston. What I did was jump this up here a little bit to make the diameter a little bit larger. I just pushed some of the metal back, polished it, got all the rust off of everything, and now we should be okay. When we test fired this bad boy, there was 0 gas on this. I had to turn down because I really didn't want to stress it very much. And I'm going to go sidebar on you here, and we're going to play this thing in slow motion one more time. And I want you to watch how this barrel bounces up and down like a banjo string. So while they were trying to use this weapon as what would amount to a DMR gun in today's world, a designated marksman, not really the best gun in the world for sniping. You got all this stuff hanging off the end of the barrel and it bounces around like a banjo string. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that, show you how this little gas key works. Let's get this pig put back together again and see if we can't make it cycle. One last thing, and that's how to set this thing up. And I'm working in the monitor here, trying to show you guys. We got it blown up about as far as we can. So you can see the holes. You can see how the hole sizes get. They vary. So the largest gas hole on this thing is that 2mm guy. So let's say we wanted to set it up for 2mm. This would go inside this pipe right here. Now I said it was threaded in the beginning, and it's not. So we'd set that up until the 2 was sticking out the top here. And let me see if I can get a little focus action right there. So we'd set that up until we had that 2 sticking out. And then this component would thread in. I'm gonna slide this over. This threads over. And when it touches down, see how this is kind of loose here? When this touches down, this locks it. So how I surmised this worked was somebody's got the tool to break this loose, and you set this thing with your fingers. Maybe there was a wrench that went on the end of it, but I don't see it because there's no longitudinal axis. And to clean it, to really deep clean it, you would just take the piston off the end of it. You'd slide that off the cylinder, I'm sorry. Take this thing out, knock that with a hammer, drive it out, and scrub it all down. You wouldn't even have to take the front end of the gun apart. So anyway, that's how that works. So in order to change a gas system, you'd back this off and then set this at whatever you'd want in terms of the orifice size. So right there, that's the 1 point. That's the 1.5 right there. So you would set it to 1.5, line the line up with that little, with that hole in the top. Bring this down with a wrench so that that doesn't walk around. This is now immobilized, and bang, there you go. I'm not entirely positive that if you weren't one of the smarter guys in the unit, you weren't going to understand how to set this gun up or what the ramifications of the numbers meant. Still, a very elegant design and a really cool way to get this done. So there is a dividing line between conservation and refurbishment. In this particular episode, we did mostly refurbishment, and we're reminded of the fact that sometimes relatively simple things can be made very, very complicated, even when they don't have to be. But it's always nice to have a positive outcome. Soviet SVT 40 did the refurb, did a little bit of the conservation on it. The weapon is fine, but I prefer sound of American clip.